the angry middle-aged white man who's joining me in the studio. A very good morning to you, Reform councillor, as we now must call you, Russell Quirk.
I am, and look, that sums him up rather well, doesn't it? Angry middle-aged white man. But there's a few of us, you know.
I think angry middle-aged white men and women may be the solution to this country's problems.
Well, no wonder we're angry.
There are quite a lot, by the way, of angry black and Asian and other middle-aged people who are also angry about where this country has come. And yet Gary Neville thought to pick out just the white ones.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? An apologist. And what is it about footballers called Gary? That seem to use their sports platform to preach to us as pseudo-politicians. Do you know what, Gary Neville? Get elected.
Oh, as you indeed have done.
I did.
But also the other thing is, here's another thing, Gary Neville. Why don't you speak out on other issues about human rights abuses that you apparently think are a big issue? Because he's talked about, you know, Gaza and all of that stuff. Because let's face it, when you take the Qatari shilling, as he absolutely does, I'm always accused. I support Israel because apparently I'm being paid by the Israelis. Not a penny, never ever turned down. I mean, I've been on a trip to Israel recently, deliberately turned down every trip I've been offered that had anything to do with the Israeli government. So you couldn't make that claim of me. Not a penny. The reason why I have the views I have is because I've got a brain and a heart and a soul and eyes and ears, and I see the reality of what's happening. Russell, on the October the 7th anniversary, and this is such an important day. Now, in this strange situation where, look, this is something that happened in another country, which most people in this country won't have ever visited. It happened to other people in another country. It sparked a war which has taken over our entire political debate and discussion in this country. It had impact on the last general election. You know, 5 MPs effectively for Gaza elected last July 2024. It's constantly the matter of debate within our parliament, on our TV screens, on our radios. What should people do today, if anything, to mark the anniversary of thousands of Palestinian terrorists, Hamas terrorists, and civilians, by the way? There were thousands of civilians who crossed the border on October the 7th 2 years ago, who raped, mutilated, murdered, butchered, burnt alive in their homes as they held their children. 1,200 Israelis and other nationalities took 251 hostage, and at least 48 of them are still held, and we think probably 28 of those sadly already dead. What should people do, if anything, to mark today?
So pay tribute, respect, think about what happened on October the 7th, that unprovoked attack on the Jewish people of Israel. If you can't show respect for fellow humankind, then say and do nothing. I am actually watching the Twitter feeds, of course, of Gary Neville and Gary Lineker as we speak, because I'm sure they'll be dropping something very, very soon, presumably this morning, to think about and pay respect for the Jews that were slaughtered and kidnapped on that day. I'll be waiting a long time, I guess, won't I? Because you're right, these people never ever fall on the right side. They fall on, from our point of view, the wrong side. Look, today is a day of respect. And, you know, unfortunately, as we'll go on to, I'm sure, we're going to see lots and lots of protests that are purposely timed to, and I use big inverted commas here, celebrate October the 7th. And whilst that is disgraceful and disgusting and abhorrent, and I think your monologue was brilliant at the beginning insofar as calling out those people, identifying who those people are. Yes, indeed, because I want to know if I'm living next door to one, if I'm working alongside of one. Freedom of speech has consequences, doesn't it?
They keep telling us.
And so it should.
Yeah.
And so it should. But for everybody.
But you say some of these events, they say they're to honour our martyrs, to celebrate 2 years of resistance. There just seem to be an awful lot of people in this country, but particularly a lot of young, those angry, what should we say, not middle-aged, but angry young white men and women who are utterly ignorant of the facts. Huge swathes of this country, particularly young people, but also, as we know, like 3/4 of Muslims in this country, according to polling by the Henry Jackson Society last year, think that people, Israelis were not raped and murdered on October the 7th 2 years ago. I mean, the reason why we know it happened, guys, it's not because of IDF propaganda. It's people like me talking about it all the time.
And the videos.
It's because Hamas filmed it themselves. They literally filmed it and put it on social media. Some of the terrorists actually filmed the terrorism, filmed the brutality, filmed the actual murders and abductions themselves, and sent them on social media to the families of the people who were their victims. They weren't shy about it. They were proud of it. It was celebrated on the day by many, still being apparently celebrated now. If you think those people are martyrs, and if you think that what has happened in the war in Gaza since then is a resistance, I always say to people, what do you think would have been an appropriate response from any government to that happening to their people? What do you think we in Britain would have done? What would France have done? What would America have done? What would any self-respecting democracy that cares about its people have done after that atrocity? And I'm telling you, a lot more people would have died than been killed by the IDF. And people, they trot out this 65,000. I mean, there's a 680,000 figure that's just bandied around. I mean, let's say 4 million people have died in Gaza. There are 2.5 million people there, but let's claim 4 million because we're just making up numbers now, right? But of those 65,000, the number put out by Hamas, the terrorist group who provoked this war, about 23 to 25,000 of those are Hamas fighters. Shall we not count those as victims? I think not. About 5,000 are people who have died of natural causes. Let's not count those, not victims of the war. There are also, I think, 3,000 to 5,000 who are believed to be victims of Hamas themselves, misfired rockets and the like. And the rest of them, people, yes, they've died in the war, and it's terrible. But the reality is the ratio of civilian deaths to combatant deaths is the lowest of pretty much any war ever fought ever. So when the BBC and others talk about this uniquely brutal war, this terrible war, no, it's unique for only two things. One, no other army has been forced to fight a war which has been prepared for 20 years with tunnels underneath, with human shields deliberately used. And two, the fact that there is such a low civilian death count given the war they're having to fight. Yes. Those are the two unique things.
Well, let us not forget that Hamas have purposely embedded themselves in civilian areas, whether it's schools, underneath hospitals or whatever, knowing that probably wouldn't be a defence as such, but knowing that they themselves would bring about those civilian casualties. What is any different to what the Israelis have done in defending themselves, and it is a defence, by the way, to what we did in 1939? Yeah. When we bombed Dresden, horrifying as that was, we did it in retaliation. We did it for the protection of the West and freedom and democracy. We're not now talking about how outrageous that act was.
It wasn't a genocide.
No, it was war. And guess who started the war? Hamas. Yeah.
It still defies belief to me today that anyone can think that there are two sides on this. You can care about innocent civilians, particularly children. They didn't bring this on themselves. The children in Gaza dying. I do. But if you are protesting about that and uniquely criticising Israel, but you're not ever, raised a flag or written a tweet or whatever because you think you're doing something useful about children in Sudan or Yemen or the Uyghur people in China or in any other of the numerous atrocities that are taking place, mass starvation going on in Sudan right now. Oh, so who's talking? Where's the flotilla for Sudan? Yeah, where is the flotilla? I mean, it's just absurd that these people are claiming any sort of moral authority. I mean, and then you get, this silly bint in North London going around on cutting down the yellow ribbons, talking about, you're defending genocide. And we've got a video. Have we got to play that video? This woman in North London. This just defies belief. Have a quick look and watch and listen to this.
I never understand these people who video people. What's your name? What's your name? Feel so proud of yourself. What's your name?
You're not going to do this.
Not going to do what?
I'm not committing a crime.
Yes, you are.
You're doing something that is...
Then call the police. You call the police and you let them know that you have an issue with this.
You disgusting little human being. You're disgusting.
I think condoning genocide is disgusting.
Oh, yeah, so we support genocide. Oh, yes.
And so...
Yeah, sure.
Because that's what this is.
No, it's not.
What? Ribbons for people who have been imprisoned, abducted, Yeah, we're going to show the world what you're doing. You're going to be famous.
Yeah, you would love that.
I'm a journalist. I work for a national newspaper. This is going straight to the Daily Telegraph.
Yeah, so if you weren't watching, you can see there's a woman who's just got... Who walks around with a big pair of scissors, by the way? I just happen to have a big pair of scissors with me. And she's cutting down all these yellow ribbons. Now, this is a very Jewish area, and people have hung ribbons for the hostages who were taken and all for the lives lost. This is a symbol. I'm wearing a yellow ribbon badge right now, bought in Hostel Square in Tel Aviv, after, the most harrowing day, talking to the families of who've either got hostages still held or those who lost their loved ones. It was just absolutely the most heartbreaking day I've ever had in my entire life. And the idea that the ribbons for dead people and hostages is in a way supporting genocide in Gaza. I mean, this is terrifying that there are people in this country who think this.
This is nothing but Holocaust denial.
It is.
That's what it is. And it's also supersized, would you like fries with that anti-Semitism? That's exactly what this is. And it's not much of a stretch for our two-tier police force, surely, to look upon what that girl's just done in terms of cutting those ribbons down. Forget the kind of humane, moral angle. That's anti-Semitism. That's racism. That's exactly what we've just seen and heard there.
I mean, I absolutely see it as that, I have to say. It really is quite extraordinary. What do you make of the Prime Minister saying to people, don't take part in un-British October 7th protests? You wouldn't want these protests banned, would you?
No, I wouldn't. And look, we're halfway down that slippery slope. We've heard, of course, from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, that there are now going to be more powers, of course, to curtail protests. Well, we know which way that's going, don't we, in terms of, ordinary British patriots.
This is the worry, isn't it? Because the main thing is, we were discussing this on the show an awful lot yesterday, because it's still in the news today, this idea that, OK, let's have rules for banning protests. We already do. There are powers to ban protests if they are, breaking the law. And, if the number of arrests we're seeing, that they could go in and they could arrest the people who are carrying the swastikas and things like that. They do a little bit of it and they film a little bit of it. But largely, these people go untackled and occasionally they're arrested afterwards. But the mass law-breaking and blatant racism on the streets, it would not be permitted by any other group.
Yeah, no,
or directed at any other group.
No. Well, we know it's worse than that, don't we? We know that those people that are committing offences at these protests, in terms of the anti-Semites, effectively, that are calling for, river to the sea, intifada, and so on, they are, if they're arrested, they are probably taken around the corner and kind of let out the van. And of course, if you drop your phone and look like, as a middle-aged, middle-class, white, patriotic protester, that you're therefore causing trouble, you could end up doing 12 months inside.
Yeah.
So yeah, slippery slope. I don't think these protests should be banned. I do think the police should be very, very tough and disciplined.
But we should absolutely judge every single one of it. And I think we need to hold these people to account in a way that, as we know, anyone carrying a Union Jack is held to account. And we mentioned Gary Neville a little bit, and I'm sure we'll come back to him. But let's talk about Tory Party conference. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, was on the show yesterday. He's on stage right now. A little bit later, Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, said Chris Philp has declared Labour's clearest failure was on borders, saying their weak gimmicks have not worked. He said his government, he said Keir Starmer's government structured lawyers to argue that the rights of illegal immigrants were more important than the rights of people in places like Epping. It's disgusting. He says, I'm here to say border control is not racist. Standing up for rape gang victims is not far right. And if Keir Starmer won't stand up for Britain, then this Conservative Party will. Now, I mean, I'm all for all of these words. You're smiling because you were a Conservative, weren't you?
Well, I was a Conservative councillor until 2014.
Yeah.
But is Chris Philp new? I mean, sorry.
Yeah, you knew around it.
Where's he been? I mean, how can he have the audacity to blame Labour, who are knees deep in blame, believe me? But 2021, 2, 3 and 4, we saw huge illegal immigration and net migration on his party's watch. Yeah. No one believes him, I'm afraid. That's
the main issue, isn't it? Let's play a little clip of something that Robert Jenrick has said. The Guardian are playing this as a gotcha. This is a speech he made. It wasn't like a private aside. He thought no one would hear it. And he was talking about a visit to Birmingham, and in particular to the Handsworth ward in Birmingham. And this is what he had to say.
In Birmingham the other day to do a video on litter, and it was absolutely appalling. It's as close as I've come to a slum in this country. But the other thing that I noticed there was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated. It's not about the colour of your skin or your faith. Of course it isn't. But I want people to be living alongside each other, not parallel lives. That's not the right way we want to live as a country.
And of course, this has been by The Guardian, of course, BBC interviews with Kemi Badenoch and with Robert Jenrick this morning. Oh, this is clearly a terrible thing to have noticed, to have spoken out loud. Now, I've looked up the stats for Handsworth. I mean, it's basically a very deprived ward. It is 91% non-white, 60% Asian, 22% black. A large proportion of people there are born overseas. 37% have English as a second language, and 16% can't speak English at all or at all well. It's a Muslim majority, largely Indian, Pakistan, Bangladeshi population. I mean, what he was saying was very clear, wasn't it, Russell Quirk, that, you know, this isn't integration. When we talk about having a multicultural, multi-ethnic society, what we mean, I mean, I don't want a multicultural society. One culture, British. There you are, end of. Don't like it, don't have to live here. Plenty of other places with different cultures. I don't want you to bring Bangladeshi culture here. I don't want you to bring Canadian culture here. I want British culture here. It's Britain. I don't think there's anything controversial about that. But when people talk about being multi-ethnic, no, but like large parts of London as well, they're not multi. You've got, you know, black people live in Hackney and Bangladeshi people live in Tower Hamlets and Turkish people live here or there. I mean, but people aren't mixing. And it's a fair point that we live in a 85-90% white majority country, and here is a ward where 91% of people are not white. And he's not saying, he specifically says, it's not about the colour of the skin, it's about the fact that people aren't integrating and people are living in silos. Now, if a left-wing person like Louise Casey or someone says this, it's absolutely fine. But David Cameron was saying this years ago. Loads of people have been saying this. Trevor Phillips, who now at Sky but used to talk sense, he's been saying all this stuff. No, but when a Tory says it, it must be racist.
Well, first of all, let's be clear. What Robert Jenrick said is just a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I mean, are we still allowed to state facts?
Not usually.
Not really, no. That particular avenue of pleasure is rapidly being taken away from us. But his point was not about not enough white faces. He's not saying, where's all the white people? They should be here. He's talking specifically about the context of integration and multiculturalism, and not, and be careful how I word this, but I'm just going to say it, the ghettoisation of parts of Britain.
That's what it is.
Yes, and I heard someone on the left recently saying, well, it's for naturalised British people that were born here, white people, to integrate with the... No, they came here. If I go to Dubai, I can't walk up to, Mohammed's palace and say, I'm here, what are you going to do to integrate with me?
That's just
from
not,
a Dubai
that's just
culture
not
perspective.
how things work. It is utter, I mean, people should be welcoming, absolutely. But again, if you want to integrate, I mean, here's an idea, you need to be able to speak the language. And I feel the same way about British people living on the Costa del Sol and not bothering to learn Spanish.
Me too.
I'm sorry, I feel exactly the same way about that. I've got family members who live in France for half the year, married to a French woman. I mean, there's a reason why they live there. And they don't expect people to speak English to them. I mean, it's just absurd. They just don't.
I know.
They don't expect translation services at the hospital.
Yep.
It's really that simple. I mean, it is utterly bizarre. It's the fact that The Guardian think that's a gotcha. Now, here's the thing. I think 3 or 4 years ago, it might have been. And then everyone would be a bit embarrassed. Okay, well, but you and I and our sensible audience would go, well, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
I don't think that The Guardian and the BBC and Sky News and ITV and the Labour Party, I don't think they get that things have changed. We're done. People are not going to be embarrassed about stating facts, stating opinions, about flying their flag, about talking up British culture and saying, no, if you want to be here, these are the rules. I think people are done with pussyfooting around and apologising and pretending that they think that their culture and our history and our background and our language and things aren't important. No, I think the world has changed now. I think there has just been a tipping point, and now that stuff, that dog whistle stuff by The Guardian, that doesn't work anymore.
I agree. I think there's been huge overreach by the left in terms of these silly labels. People in Reform, I was out campaigning recently with people driving past shouting out of windows, fascist, racist. We just laugh. Because it
doesn't work anymore.
It's pathetic. But you're right, the wider public it's not sticking with either. It's the kind of the boy that cried wolf kind of stuff politically, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's so much to talk about, lots of calls on the board. I'll get to as many calls as I can. I particularly want to hear from your thoughts about the Prime Minister calling on students and others not to take part in what he called un-British protests, marking today's anniversary, the October the 7th Hamas massacre. I mean, given that they couldn't stop, apparently chose not to stop that march on Saturday, and indeed protest. But I mean, can protest outside Whitehall, outside the Prime Minister's own home, on the same day that 2 Jews were massacred in an Islamist extremist attack on a synagogue in Manchester. I mean, this pleading with people. Would you mind not being anti-Semitic, nasty, hate-filled, Hamas terrorists supporting racists? Would you mind awfully not doing that? My God, it's a good thing these people don't write a little hurty tweet, because the coppers would be round there straight away, wouldn't they? But I want to know from you, should they be banned? Are we beyond that? We don't want them banned. Do we want to know who these people are? Should the Prime Minister be pleading for this? And what do you make of the people who want to go on this march? If you genuinely think that it's perfectly appropriate for someone to do one of these events today, please call in. I would love to find out why you think that's okay. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.